Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to explain you 5 basic tips you need to know to get started with SelfCAD. Tip number 1, tools go left to right, simple first, advanced and drop down. Let me show you what this means. So it starts with most software go, you start with create. In create, you have the most simplest way to create is basic shapes. Next thing is a more advanced way in create is generators, which requires more input but more flexibility. The next thing is drawing. Drawing is much more advanced, but in drawing itself you have freehand drawing, which is more like a 2D drawing and you can finalize it to get a shape. And then you have 3D sketch, which is much more advanced. You create a profile and then in order to finalize it, you have to later take the profile and convert them into a mesh using one of the more advanced tools. So this is the most advanced way. If you move further, you start with the basic transformations, move, rotate, scale, very simple stuff. And then you start deformations, which is much more advanced, nonlinear transformations. And then you go to the modification tools, which is actually a lot more advanced. And then you have the Boolean tools, stitch and scoop, which will soon be renamed to Boolean as another software, and tools and so on and so forth, more advanced stuff. Within the tool itself, let's say if I take a basic cube, or I have here already a basic cube, and I go to move, you see the basic stuff over here sounds very simple. Simple measurements, you enter the measurements and coordinates and you can click to center the object and very basic stuff. But then you have advanced settings. If you go to advanced settings, you have a lot more advanced stuff. You have a magnet, which is very helpful, and these other stuff, not to go into it now. You also have in these tools, I didn't list it in the tip, so I'm just going to show you that within this tool itself, some things are dynamic based on what happened. So I have just centered that, the first move I made since opening the application, so now I have an option to repeat that. The option repeat wasn't available because I've never made something. So these things sometimes become dynamic, but for the most part, everything stays, as I'll explain later. So that's basically the flow of the application. Moving on to the next thing is tip number 2, drag and drop shapes by default, and you can double click to have settings until you reset. So you can see I can get a shape by simply drag and drop, and that gets the default settings, which application set, no specific logic. I mean, most of these shapes are the default, what makes up this shape for these type of shapes. But that's very basic, quickly drop something. Then you can go and open it up in settings. If you click, actually not double click, it's a single click, you click on it, and then you have all of the settings over here, which in my case, you see the last time I modeled, I used a tiny sphere. That was the setting. It remembers the setting until I click default values. I reset the defaults, and then this is the default, which is the same we got before from drag and drop. And as I change it, we'll remember it until I reset the defaults again. Another thing here, a side note, is that all of these tools have a confirmation button to confirm or to exit out. But these are the 2 type of tools in SelfCAD. There's a type of tool which requires, like, it's an independent thing, like create something, or some of the more advanced tools that requires confirmation. But then there are more basic tools, which are like move tool, which does not have a confirmation because they are default tools. The behavior of these tools are also that while this is open, you can still use something else. For example, I can move this, I can act with other tools, that not everything is blocked. While you're in a tool that requires confirmation, it kind of isolates the application working with that, and most other stuff will be blocked. Okay, moving to the next tip is tip number 3 is selection. Looks simple, but needs powerful options and drop down and icons. Okay, so let me explain what this is. So if you think about the selection over here, if I'm going to switch selection, I'll go now to inverse select to select this shape, the cube. If I want to click a face, it's activated face. I can simply click on a face and start selecting faces. If I want to move to edge selection, I can go to edge selection. It converted these to edges, but also I can click now on edge. It's relatively simple. Same idea if I want to go to vertex selection. This sounds very simple. I can go now and select vertices and so on and so forth. But you have a lot more advanced features in the advanced settings. First of all, the drop down, you can go faces, polygons, and material selection. And then you have over here, which this gives you dynamically based on what you have. So you have like loop selection now, and if you go, for example, to polygons, this will give you part selection, a lot more advanced stuff. And SelfCAD has probably one of the most advanced selection options, but they're all hidden. Again, the same thing as I said before in the drop down in the transformation which I showed. This is to keep it simple, but the powerful features are often hidden. You have to explore it. Okay, next tip number 4, selection first. Pick an object type and SelfCAD adapts, mesh profile, etc. Alright, this is one of the unique things in SelfCAD, which is what makes SelfCAD so powerful while still so simple looking. So when you are going to do something in a shape, it often depends what you have. So if I'm going to select, for example, a face over here, and I'm going to use any of the tools, let's say if I go to extrusion, they will behave based on extrusion based off a face extrusion. If I would do to select, for example, an edge, or if I select a loop or things like that, it will behave differently. And this will have a total different behavior, and this is based on because it selected an edge. Similarly, if you have a profile, this gives a lot more advanced and different. So the way this works in most other applications is you have the tools available to open, and if you open a tool, then you choose the object, and because the tool needs to behave differently in the object, that's why you first need to switch mode. So you have a lot of different modes. You have to enter a certain mode, and then in that mode you have a list of tools available in that mode. SelfCAD avoided this option, adding modes and different settings and having like multiply everything over and over, is by doing selection first. You cannot enter a tool without selection. So if I would deselect this object, if you go now over here, you see these are all grayed out, and this leads me to the next option, the next tip, which says all tools are always visible, grayed out if not available, with explanation on hover. So now these are grayed out. If I'm going to click on extrusion, you see over here on top, when I hard to click on it, but if I hover on it, you see on top it says extrusion, selected polygons, or all polygons, extrude selected polygons or all polygons if none are selected. That basically tells me what it's going to do. But if I'm going to click on it, it's like please select an object. So this basically gives me always please select an object. If you have, for example, I'm going to draw quickly a profile, a 3D sketch. I'm going to draw a simple profile. If I draw a profile like this, and now if I'm going to select an object plus a profile, and if I'm going to click extrusion, it's going to tell me operation unavailable for multiple objects. Please select one object or combine them into a group. It tells me basically it's not available. If I'm going to go now, for example, cut with profile, this is available because this is something that requires the combination of a profile plus this. Same would be other tools like follow path. There's some minimum tools that can do that. So the tools are smart, they know what they do, and they give a message when not available. They give tips on top, and they give messages when clicking on them. But overall, the idea that you need to select something first is what makes it so simple. So if you go now extrude this profile, this is a total different tool. Extruding a profile is create mesh. I can extrude without creating a mesh, and I can click create mesh, then I can choose fill top or bottom or both, fill holes. I can do, let's say if I don't do this, I can make it this is, and it gives you a tip always what this is doing. If you hover on it, it tells you a tip everything what it is. But if you understand, extruding a profile is something completely different than extruding a mesh, and this is working because of the idea we have selection first. If you select the profile, it knows how to behave and how to do everything. That's basically it for now. I hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments if you have any question or if you want me to show anything else. Thanks for watching. Bye.